Michael Boyle's StrengthCoach.com presents the Strength Coach Podcast, brought to you by Perform Better, the experts in functional training and rehabilitation. PerformBetter.com.
Hey everyone, welcome to episode 186 of the Strength Coach Podcast, the official podcast of Michael Boyle's StrengthCoach.com, the world's best source for strength and conditioning information. You can try StrengthCoach.com out for 3 days for just $1. You'll have access to hundreds of articles, videos, programs, and the best forum on the net. The StrengthCoach.com forum is the best way to connect with Coach Boyle. He's on there every day. And if you have a staff of 2 or more and you want to sign up as a group, we have a special membership offer for you up to 50% off, depending on how many people you have. Check it out at StrengthCoach.com. I'm your host, Anthony Duran, and the show notes are located at StrengthCoachPodcast.com. Want to get in touch with me? Shoot me an email to StrengthCoachPodcast@gmail.com. All right, on the Coach's Corner, I spoke to Coach Boyle about a couple of forum threads, one including med ball programming and another one called depth jumps. Both got a lot of play on the forum, so good stuff there. That and much more coming up on the Coach's Corner in a little while. For the Ask the Equipment experts with Perform Better, Chris Poirier joins us to talk about the current sale and some new things with the summits, including a new partnership with Nike. For the Results Fitness University Business of Fitness segment, Alan Cosgrove is on to talk about when to send an issue to a collection agency. That actually is some also from the StrengthCoach.com forum. The Functional Movement System segment, Mark Snow is on to continue his 3-part series on using the FMS in your group fitness program. Part 2 is on programming options using the FMS. For the Hit the Gym with the Strength Coach, I have Todd Hargrove, author of A Guide to Better Movement. Spoke to Todd about some different chapters in his book, including flexibility, mobility, motor control, learning, neutral versus natural, the key role of attention, motor development, primal patterns, learning, lots of stuff, that and much more coming up from Todd in a little while. Also have a special segment with Kevin Larrabee on the launch of the FitCast Network and what's happening with the Certified Functional Strength Coach certification. Lots of things to get to, so let's get on the phone with Coach Boyle. All right, now it's time for the Coach's Corner with Coach Boyle. Coach, how you doing?
I'm going with fantastic. Yes, that's
right. Fantastic. Coach, let's get into it. I know you got to get on a call. We got a couple of good threads on some power. So this is a really good one on med ball programming, and he was talking about James Cavan was talking about, he's curious as to know what coaches are doing here with their med ball programming. I'm just going to read a little bit. We have a good range of weights, like for the Dynamax. They do low rebound. They have the slam balls, which are like kind of moderate to high. He has some other ones that he does like high rebound. He programs low reps with the Dynamax because there's either a long amortization phase or a complete reset for each rep, but he feels it's more challenging with those, per repetition. As for the rebound speed off the wall, he increases the reps with those balls because he feels like I guess there's a correlate to this with the cycle progresses towards a more power as the repetitions go up rather than down, which seems counterintuitive. He wanted to know if people change balls based on their elastic qualities as part of the training cycle, and will they change repetitions based on elastic qualities. Can you just kind of go over a little bit of your thoughts on this?
Yeah, it's interesting, and I linked to that using non-bouncing medicine balls article because I wrote that maybe a couple of years ago when we've gone almost exclusively to the non-bouncing ball, because one of the things that I said in the article is I don't think the plyometric effect is that important, because the thing that I look at is that shooting, striking, hitting, even though we talk about there's a like golf swing, there's a pre-stretch, it's primarily a concentric action. And it's a really explosive, powerful concentric action, unlike kind of reacting to, he's talking about jumps. But running is multi-step. You're reacting to the ground. There's a very different dynamic, I think, in the lower body than there is when you're talking about core power movements. And so I just, I used to think, we want those really elastic balls. And I was sort of like, I'd call it the old AP style. Athletes' performance was very much like, boom, boom, boom. Thinking about getting that rapid pre-stretch and rapid, concentric contraction. But I look at that and think, That doesn't happen. That's not very real world. So we went the other way, and we've had very good results. And as far as the reps go, I think the rep thing is interesting because when you think about reps, you're looking at a situation where it's strictly intuitive. 5 reps just doesn't feel like enough with the medicine ball. I think when the load is that light, because we understand if we're training for power, we want to move a lighter load faster, and we probably want to be, in that like 4 to 6 rep range. And that's what we would do kind of, even 1 to 6, whatever, if we had weight on the bar. But I look at it and think, geez, is that really what we should do when we're throwing medicine balls? And I don't know why. I don't know why. It just feels better to get more reps in. So 10 each side, to me, feels fine. I wouldn't like 20, but I don't think I'd like 5. So that's kind of where we're at.
Yeah, I mean,
but the good thing is I think it's a big food for thought thing.
Yeah, it really is. Interesting conversation. I think I said in the newsletter, we said, Robbie had a couple responses that probably could be turned into articles. One thing is I kind of agree with that rep range sometimes because I think, part of that was the idea with keeping the reps low was like we're trying to kind of preserve the central nervous system, right? We're trying to we don't want to be fatigued while we're doing it. And with those light balls, you never really seem to fatigue anybody doing too much of that.
Exactly. Like when you think about it, you're right. If you did 10 reps in a clean, you're going to fatigue, and some of the reps are not going to be as powerful. They're going to be sloppy. That doesn't happen with the medicine ball. So I think there is maybe I would call it intuitive use of science, where we look at something and say, well, the science tells us this. But intuitively, I see this. And intuitively, I see the reps as being beneficial as opposed to not beneficial. So I think we go with it. And I think that's why we I had a conversation yesterday with a gentleman from the NSCA just talking about the whole research idea. And I think we have to be careful not to be slaves to the research, not to be so attached to the research that we do things that we think intuitively are wrong.
Yeah, agreed. Another thing, and I think I've said this on the podcast before, is one of the things I feel like maybe because, again, my lens, I have some older people. Sometimes with the lighter medicine ball, I'm really trying to focus on whatever speed I can get. I really want to, keep them moving as fast as I can. So I have really moved a lot to a lighter 2 and a 3 pound Dynamax, the smaller ones. Another thing I do is I feel like with some of the elastic moves, and this is the reason why I stopped using any of the elastic ones, like the AP style, was a lot of my golfers. A big problem with an older golfer is they can't get through to the follow-through. So like a righty golfer doesn't get through to the left leg, doesn't get a proper weight shift. And a lot of times with those elastic moves, they don't get that full expression of power. So what I've had them do is, say, look, you're not catching the ball. Let the ball go. I set up a backstop. So they follow through. They throw that ball. They get to that left leg. And then I tell them, watch the wall for 1 second after. I want to take a picture of you at the end of the move. So in other words, they're not worried about the ball. The backstop's going to stop it. So get that full expression of power. That's just something for me that one of the reasons why I've stopped the kind of going on that elastic, those elastic med ball throws.
I think you're right. I mean, I think it's one of those things. I don't know. You have to at some point let your experience dictate some of what you're going to do. And I think but I love what you said with Jim. I mean, and I know Jim listens. It's cool to have people, throw out that, well, what about this? What about this question? And why doesn't X apply to Y? In terms of, okay, if it would work in a depth jump, why wouldn't it work in a medicine ball throw? So at least I like to be forced to think about things, and I like to be forced to defend my positioning on things.
Yeah.
Because it really makes me have to think.
Yeah, it was definitely a great thread. Let's you mentioned depth jumps. Let's go into that because there was a great conversation about depth jumps. Abby started it. which is not uncommon to get. He gets people going, he gets great conversations going. But in the conversation, it said, you realize that you need to get back to maybe testing the forejump, and you haven't done it in a while, and you still struggle with how we make someone more elastic. You said you might even think it's genetic. Talk to us about expand on this depth jump topic.
Yeah, it's funny. This probably goes back. I wrote that elasticity versus power article. Has to be 6-7 years ago, and I bought a bunch of Just Jumps, and at BU we were actually practicing the forejump. I went so far. I actually contemplated buying mini trampolines because you see that elasticity, that elastic quality in jumpers, in gymnasts, in tumblers that you see in very rare athletes, where they're really, I always say it's like somebody, that super athlete looks like when you throw a super ball off the ground, that ability the super ball has to like absorb energy and then produce it on the rebound is so exceptional. And obviously all the things that we're doing, Olympic lifting and plyometrics and all this stuff is intended to elicit that, yet it really doesn't. So to me, I think that's one of the great mysteries of training. And I know, like I'm talking to Bill Knowles about it. Bill Knowles has a spring floor, like a gymnastics floor that he put in his facility for exactly that reason. And I've thought about that, and I just wonder, is from kind of an investment standpoint, is that worthwhile? The idea with mini trampolines was a really good idea, but in all honesty, I was worried about the danger because I have to worry about any idea that I seek to implement. You have to worry about the mass production of that idea. It's much like going back to the ex-wife, the 135-pound roller. You've got to look at that and think, even though that might work for somebody, there's still that aspect of it where you look at it and think, okay, what happens if this gets broadly applied across a big range of people? And I think enough people in our field don't think about that and just sort of, randomly do stuff. And it's kind of the Kelly Stratton mobility wall, that catch a band, yank on the band, roll with an Olympic bar. And there may be certain subsets of people where that stuff works and then other subsets of people where it doesn't. And I'm always striving more for something that can be better across the board. And in the elasticity thing, I haven't found it. I wish I could. That's why I always kind of keep throwing it out there and saying, okay, does anybody have any info? And then it was funny because Devin chimed in about like hockey having longer force production times. So with skating, the longer you can keep that blade in contact with the ice, the faster you are. And that may be why we don't see these kind of super elastic people as much, because we're seeing this one big population group. In skating, you're not developing that. Because I said, if you look at three of our coaches, Mike Vaughn, Ken Whittier, and Steve Bigelow, they're elastic as hell. They've got Mike Vaughn and Ken Whittier have probably above 35-inch vertical jumps. And when you see them do hurdle jumps, they got that like boing kind of effect that you just feel like, oh, I can't teach that boing. Why can't I teach that? Whereas Steve Bigelow has probably under 30, and he has more of that boing. He's a hurdler. He's a track guy. But yet I can't get that same whatever it is in 4 or 5 athletes. It's very frustrating to be honest.
Coach, did you stop kind of testing forejump because you didn't just found you weren't you couldn't teach that, or was it because of a little bit of the single leg idea, like here you are testing a 2-legged jump when you're not seeing that a lot in sport anyway, this 2-legged thing maybe in basketball?
I felt like we were wasting our time because we weren't impacting it. Because what I was hoping for, and this is what I wrote about in that elasticity versus power article, was that we started looking at guys' ratios of 4-jump average to 1 jump and trying to figure out if there was some correlation. And the only correlation that we found was that some of our high talent, low vertical jump guys had a very strong ratio, meaning we had some guys, good players for us at BU, who had vertical jumps in the 24, 25 range, which was very low. our better players were 30 plus. But those 24, 25 guys had elasticities in the 90s, meaning they were in like their 3-jump average was 21 to 22. And so what I realized is, okay, these guys, they're more elastic, even though they're less powerful, and that's what allows them to survive, and maybe even allows them in some ways to thrive in our setting. But at the end of the day, I was still trying to make their vertical jumps go up and their speed go down. It just wasn't changing what I was doing. But as I read some of the stuff and look at some of the stuff, I think, okay, sometimes I think I abandon ideas too quickly.
Yeah. All right. Well, there's 2 great conversations that are still going on, and that's depth jumps as well as medicine ball programming on the strengthcoach.com forum. So, Coach, thanks for coming on, and we will talk to you next time.
All right. Thank you, Anthony. I appreciate it.
All right. Now it's time for the Ask the Equipment Experts with Perform Better, and I am here with the head honcho. Hasn't been on in a while, Chris Poirier. Chris, thanks for coming on today.
Anthony, thanks for having me back.
All right. We're going to talk about the summits, but let's get it over with. Spring cleaning sale right now. Give us a little rundown on what's going on.
Oh, right now on our web, Ant, we have actually sales going on. We have actually about 30 or so different products that we just did a big inventory out back and realized that we had some overstock on some stuff with some new inventory coming in. So we got some really good sales going on, anywhere from 30 to 60% off on actually some really popular things, ladders, plyo boxes. Actually, there's a lot of things on there that are really, really popular. We just got a little heavy on inventory, and we're actually just trying to reduce it before we have more inventory coming in on those items this summer.
Very cool. We all need a little spring cleaning sometimes.
Yeah,
it's like a garage sale. But now you're spring cleaning, it's going to make my place more crowded. So I got more crap now I need. Chris, let's talk about the summit. We're 2 weeks away from Orlando. You got a big announcement with Nike. We'll first go over that. Talk to us about Nike and what that really means for the attendee.
Sure. Well, first of all, we had an arrangement, or we had a relationship going with Adidas for the past 6 years, and they've been fantastic for all these years, and it just sort of fizzled away, and they did not renew this year, and fortunately for us, Nike, who we've been talking to for the last 3 years, has always been there, ready to come on board and to help out whichever way they can with the summits. And sure enough, they stepped up this year, and they took over right where Adidas left off, and they're contributing some giveaways, and they'll be attending some of the summits, and we're looking to grow this relationship with them because they have some really big ideas and plans that we'd like to share in and do together with these summits and really grow them to something really big. So we're really excited about having them on board. I mean, obviously, Adidas was great, but Nike is obviously they're the beast. They're the industry leader. They're the ones that are known worldwide and obviously can do some great things. So we're excited to have them on board.
Yeah, I'm pumped because I'm part of the Nike Trainer Network, obviously through our good buddy Jaron Coopersmith. But I've been part of that for a couple of years. And the only reason why I'm not going to Orlando next in a couple of weeks is because I'm going out to Portland for something with Nike. But there's some really big things coming with training. So I'm excited that you guys are now on board because I think Nike training, there's some really good stuff coming. So very cool. Chris, let's just on the summit, there hasn't been a lot change. We've been talking to Aaron about the summits and who's coming and pre-conferences and everything. We actually have Kevin Larrabee on talking about today, the CSFC Certified Functional Strength Coach pre-con. But you've kind of gone, and I think this is great. You've gone to you're adding more of like lecture only. Hands-on onlys. It used to be sometimes where some of these lectures, to be honest, as great as they are, I was like, what's this guy going to talk? What's this guy going to do in the hands-on? And they don't always match. And I think you're really working to make sure that, look, if somebody doesn't have a hands-on, we're just going to make them do a lecture, and then you kind of gotten some more hands-on only workouts, which I think are great too. That's awesome, especially in the morning. So just kind of talk to us about kind of that shift that you've done.
Yeah, we're trying to do more of it, and it's obviously we want to get someone there to do, if they do have a hands-on that correlates with their lecture. Obviously, we want to do it. Obviously, there is some still this year that it's tough to correlate what they're doing, and some of them are just going to be workout type things, and some of them really are just motivational workouts. But this year, we do have a lot more correlation with the hands-ons to some of the lectures, because the fact that we added more hands-on only and lecture only from people that that didn't have a topic that was suitable for a hands-on. One of the things we try to do with the summits every year is we try to make them better and better. And sometimes there is no change. We're always trying to find a way to add something to the add something to it. And we're obviously looking for ideas. And fortunately, we've been 18 years of growing them, or 16 years, of growing them, that trying to get that correlation to how do we keep getting it better and better. I just don't want to change it up every year to change it up, but I do want to continue to get them better. And sometimes, this year probably there happens to be, the changes that you mentioned, they're, very slim to, as far as just having more people do hands-on only or having more people just do lecture only. That's been a slight little change, and we'll probably continue down that path into the next couple of years.
Awesome. Good thing. Good stuff. I will remind everybody that is Thursday, June 2nd. That's the pre-con. And then with Greg Cook and Rick Mayo. And then Friday, Saturday, Sunday to Sunday, June 5th in Orlando. So if you're in the area, head on down there. So, Chris, thanks so much for coming on today, and we'll talk to you next time.
Hey, thanks, Anthony. Thanks for having me back.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Business of Fitness segment sponsored by Results Fitness University here on the Strength Coach podcast. My name is Alan Cosgrove, and today I'm going to talk about something that I saw mentioned on the business forum at strengthcoach.com. I do check in there. I go and see what's going on and what questions you guys are asking. So if you have any follow-ups, I'm always in there. And this question came up from Barbara, and it was about contracts and when to send someone to collections. Now, the overwhelming response upon reading that from everybody's responses, everybody else other than me and perhaps one other person, was that you never send people to collections when they don't pay their contracts. Like when they have not fulfilled their agreement. Essentially they have not delivered on their end of the contract in terms of paying you for your services while you have. But the overwhelming majority of answers on the forum, apart from myself and one other, were that you just don't send people to collections. I disagree 100% on that. If you are going to go through the time to have contracts written up, if you're going to have people fill out agreements that outline what you will deliver in terms of services in exchange for what they're going to pay, and someone just decides not to pay you, after you've followed up a couple of times with them to try to reach out and have this resolved and have them, I think the ethical and legal thing to do is to send them to a collections agency. Now, what a collections agency does is they take the contract and they contact the person who owes you money. And I don't know how effective they are. We've only used them a couple of times and they were 100% effective for us. But they take a percentage of the money that's owed. That's their fee. So it costs nothing for you to do this. Now, the answers on the forum were about, it creates a bad reputation in your town. I don't think so. I fail to see how legally enforcing the agreement that you set up does anything other than make you look professional. Right? I would rather be known as the person who enforces my agreements than be known as the person whose agreements are not worth the paper they're written on. Could you imagine a situation where Visa just let you not pay your bill? Or your landlord just not let you pay your rent, or the car company just didn't let you worry about you paying your car payment and just let you off with it. No, and this is one of the things that I feel strongly about, that we end up looking, our industry becomes unprofessional. It looks small and we look amateurish because contracts aren't really worth anything in our world. Well, it should be. It should be the same as any bills you owe medically, any bills you owe for real estate or your car or your cable bill or your visa bill, is that someone has signed a legally binding agreement with you. And as long as you've fulfilled your end of the bargain and they are in violation, I think you should be sending these people to collections to collect your money. I think it's one of the things that we should be doing to separate ourselves, from the smaller operators. We run this as a business for real. Right, so that may be a controversial answer to that post on the forum. I don't understand why you would have agreements if you're not going to enforce them. Right, my thoughts are this is legally binding on both ends. Now, I'm not just sending someone to collections the second a credit card payment doesn't go through. Right, a card could get cancelled. It could be, an old card or something. So I will call people. But it's not, this is far beyond that. Once we've tried ethically to collect it and contact them and someone's just refusing to pay, then it's time to take it to the next level. And that's my recommendations on that. So if any follow-up questions on that, I am on the business forum in the strengthcoach.com and I'm happy to answer any of your questions. This is Alan Cosgrove from resultsfitnessuniversity.com. I look forward to talking to you guys next time.
Hello and welcome to the Functional Movement Systems segment. My name is Mark Snow and today I would like to cover part 2 of a 3-part series titled Using the Functional Movement Screen in Your Group Fitness Program, Getting More Clients, Better Retention, and Better Results. Today we'll be going over part 2 titled Programming Options Using the Functional Movement Screen. We must understand that if we're running a group exercise program, that each and every client must receive enough positive exercise stress that they make specific adaptations to impose demands. But we can't apply so much stress, or that stress can't be negative stress, that we end up seeing the wrong types of adaptations. This is one big advantage of having the FMS. We understand each and every individual's functional and dysfunctional patterns, and we can use that within our programming options to make sure that those individuals are achieving the positive results that they want so bad. There's 2 aspects where we can make these modifications. Number 1, we want to make the necessary changes to the individual, and also we want to actually create an environment that allows these positive changes to stick. When we begin talking about the individual, this basically means a corrective exercise that has made the biggest impact on their FMS score. Understand, we want to use this corrective exercise to create positive short-term responses so they can start achieving long-term adaptations. This will be their homework, something that they can do at home, but there's also some different techniques that we can use to help put this within the workout. And one of my favorite ways to do this is called Fms Rest Breaks. We have that corrective exercise, we put it and basically sprinkle it throughout the workout. One thing we tried in our facility is we had that FMS break in there in the beginning, and then we had it at the end. And then we rechecked our scoring and we noticed, you know what? People aren't improving their FMS scores. People aren't getting more output out of it, and then the results aren't what we want them to achieve. But when we decided to start sprinkling it throughout the workout, 2 minutes is all you need, is to find 2 minutes within the workout, 1 to 5 times within that workout, where we can start recreating that positive short-term response. What we found when we did that is we got better FMS scores, better output in each and every exercise class, and then we, of course, started achieving better results. Another option you can consider, and this is more for pretty much strength-based workouts, is you can do a compound set or a superset. So you have this strength-based exercise, and you can add that corrective exercise as another piece to that superset. So it gives them that 2 minutes of rest that they need before they get into the next set of that strength exercise, but you're actually creating another positive short-term response, and you're able to sprinkle that throughout the workout. So it has a big effect with that. The second piece is it's great if we're making those positive results with the individual, but if the environment is not ideal for change, we're never going to be able to get those results to stick. So as we look at the board, understand this is, are there any exercises on that board for the workout of the day that cannot be conditioned, cannot be strengthened because they'll take their FMS scores negative in a negative pattern. Those are our red light exercises. We want to take those off the board and replace that with a different exercise. Number 2 is, are there any exercises that if we keep them as is are going to be negative towards that person's movement pattern? Or if we make the necessary modifications being sets, reps, the load, or make it more technique driven, that will actually help to be a more better environment for positive change. That is a yellow light exercise. We can have 1 to 3 yellow light exercises within the program. We want to make the necessary changes so we're allowing those positive adaptations to stick. And the rest of the exercises are good to go. They're good. They're functional patterns. They're good to strengthen. They're good to condition. Those are green light exercises. So just go with them. Again, to review the environment, get rid of the reds, replace with something else, modify, identify the yellows and modify them, and then use your green lights as much as possible. Again, I cannot emphasize enough that you want to make positive changes within the individual, but you must make the environment ideal for change if you want to see best results. So that is all for today. Thanks again for listening to the Functional Movement System segment part 2 of using the FMS in your group exercise program. Stay tuned for our next session where in part 3, I will discuss follow-up FMS and results.
All right, now it's time for a special segment. We have Kevin Larrabee on, and Kevin's going to talk to us a little bit about the Certified Functional Strength Coach. Kevin, how you doing, bud?
I'm doing fantastic. Thank you so much for letting me chat with you a little bit.
Awesome. You know what? Before we get to that, just give me 30 seconds on your whole new venture so other people know it's not just a Fitcast and you're doing like 75 other podcasts right now. Talk to us about that really quick.
Yeah, man. Thank you. It's I launched this thing called the Fitcast Network at fitcast.network where I just kind of branched out to do more podcasts because, like, Anthony, you know, like this stuff is a blast to do. Like, it's great to be able to talk to people and kind of share this information with people throughout the internet, throughout the world. So I wanted to expand on that a little bit, do kind of a book club thing on there, and also do some productivity and motivation type stuff. And yeah, it's just been fun to have more reasons to call people up and chat with people and talk about great things that are going on.
Absolutely. And it's kind of cool. You know, I always say that about, like, you know, it is cool to be able to get on the phone with a lot of these different coaches and learn. And we have Todd Hargrove on the show today, and he wrote that book about movement, and it's just like learning from like people that you just wouldn't. Molly Galbraith, who's been on your show a bunch of times. We had her on last episode, and Nick Winkleman before that. It's like people, and you know, I get to talk to Coach Boyle every 2 weeks, just specifically about training, so it's fun. But and I will remind people, go on there. Kevin does a thing on Patreon, so he does a lot of this stuff for advertising free. So there's no ads on there, and you can go on and support him. So good stuff. And Kevin, if it wasn't for Kevin, I might not be doing this podcast. So because I did learn a lot from you in the beginning when I was doing Better Golf with Fitness and podcast, my first podcast. So yeah, man, you guys owe Kevin. If you listen to this podcast, you know Kevin's kind of in my tree.
Dude, like you and I have been having great rides with this stuff. And again, it's like it's so just awesome when we get to go to stuff like the Perform Better Summits, and then you actually get to kind of talk to your audience, which is a blast. So, you know, again, you know, hats off to you, man. You put together just an amazing show, getting all this information together and able to corral Mike Boyle, you know, to get him on the phone to answer some questions. Not always the easiest thing. So, you put together a great set of shows yourself, man. So, you know, don't sell yourself short at all.
Thanks, man. And you know what? It is fun to go to the summits. People come up to me, but the problem is nobody recognizes my face. I have to ask a question before anybody comes up to me.
You needed a cartoon on the logo for 5 years like I did, and now they're like, you kind of look like a cartoon. That might be him.
Kev, let's talk about CFSC. You guys doing some great stuff with this. We've had you on periodically to kind of go over, you know, talk about it. We do think it's important. Obviously, it's a Coach Boyle product as well.
Yeah.
But you guys are doing a lot of these things. You've expanded to level 2. Last time we talked to you, you hadn't done the level 2 yet.
Yeah.
How's that going?
It was great. We actually had our first one just a couple weeks ago, and we we had a small group, so we did kind of like not really a test run, but we wanted to have a smaller group to make sure everything ran smoothly. Being the first one, we wanted the same incredible experience that we expect to deliver every single one of these events, level 1 or level 2. So we had our first one where we had 30 people. We kind of figured the best way to do this, and we're always, whether it be anything like you do or Mike Boyle does, like it's all about prioritizing quality. Like at the end of the day, like if we make less money but we have a higher quality product, that's what we're going to do, and that's what we did with level 2. So we've actually made the groups even smaller because it's so much more coaching intensive to do the Olympic lifts, to do the speed and agility work, to do the advanced plyometrics and power and conditioning stuff. So we made the groups even smaller, but we kind of kept the same system, and we've found that it's definitely a more demanding certification for people out there. Like we had some people that were getting like really gassed just going through the first half, which is kind of our warm-up stuff. But we do kind of 3 hours of warm-ups going through a lot of our progressions. And at the end of the day, you kind of see like, yeah, this is what our coaches need to be able to do, because with the summer coming up, you might have 3 or 4 groups throughout the day. You can't just like be like, I'm tired after running 1 or 2 groups. So that's been it's been like a really great hurdle to also have in there to make sure, you need to be able to maintain your stamina throughout the day to testing. And you can't say, I'm just too tired to test. You need to be able to actually have the ability to do this stuff throughout the day, because again, we have a high bar that we set for anyone that we certify, level 1 or level 2. And that is kind of even higher with the level 2 because it's so much more demanding physically.
Very cool. That's a little added benefit, a little thing now. It's like you guys can throw in there. Very cool. Like, hey,
yeah,
you got to have the stamina. You better get ready. And, reminds me a little of the RKC stuff and SFG.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
You better be prepared. Kev, you guys are doing, again, another year of this is you guys do this before Perform Better. And the reason why we're on the phone is really just to kind of promote this, because it's such a great opportunity. You're already going for those 3 days. You're going to meet some really great people at the workshop. It's a great place to network, and at the Perform Better Summit. But this is such a great opportunity to take the day before the summit and to get certified. Talk to us about what's coming up with your partnership with the Perform Better Summits.
We're going to be starting off in Orlando on June 2nd. So that's Thursday. We do these events the day before they officially start because they kind of do some pre-con content. And we started offering our level 1 last year. We actually sold out all 3 of our level 1 events last year before the event, because you can kind of just come a day early. You can go through the certification, and then you have 3 more days of education. You get to kind of also hang out with us. If you have more questions, like I'm around at the booth all weekend, and Mike's usually around if he's presenting. So that's a great opportunity to talk to him as well. But what we've been able to do with partnering with Perform Better is that we have all this space because they do hands-on portions as well. And they have all the equipment. So we figured, well, why don't we just do these events there? Because we basically have a Perform Better warehouse at our disposal. So we're able to have big groups. And like I mentioned before, with the level 2 stuff, we cap it off at 10 per coach. For this, we cap it off at 14 per coach. So you're still going to get really great individualized attention and feedback, because we don't want to be one coach in a room with 60 people. You never get feedback. And the thing that separates the CFSC from like other certifications out there, not all of them, but most of them, is that we have a required practical testing component at the end. We make sure all of our coaches can move well, can demo well, can give clear and concise coaching cues, and have an understanding of our system of progressions or regressions, and know what to do when plan A does not work. What is your plan B, C, D, and E? You got to have an idea of what to do next, and not just say, well, I guess we can't do this today. Let's just have you walk on the treadmill for 30 minutes and I'll cash my paycheck at the end of the week. We want all these coaches to be exceptional. And we've grown this network of now 800 coaches throughout the world. It's been really, really cool to be able to set all this stuff up. And again, with these events, it's a great opportunity. First, you should be going to those Perform Better Summits. And if you are, we'll be in Orlando on Thursday, June 2nd, Chicago, Thursday, June 23rd, Providence on July 14th, and then Long Beach will be there on August 11th. Again, those are all on Thursday. They start at 10 a.m. They go to about 6 p.m., And it's a great event. We've gotten nothing but incredible feedback in the almost 2 years that we've been doing this stuff. And again, it's a great opportunity. It's also at a discounted rate. It's $50 less. It's $4.99 if you come to these events. Just keep in mind that you also need to be registered for the Perform Better Summits to attend these specific events. And again, we've just had so much great feedback, and I really think we're getting to the saturation where we have a really great name in the industry. And again, I hope if you're in the industry, talk to some of your friends that have done the certification. I can guarantee they're going to give you nothing but positive feedback. And again, we're really excited to kind of be working with Perform Better again this year to offer this stuff.
Very cool. Yeah, and I will say I hope this is setting the kind of the tone for other certifications, because I love the fact that all the materials are sent out and they're all online, and so people have to learn beforehand. You don't have to spend another day, so it kind of ends up you're able to keep that cost down. They don't have to spend another day, just going over the stuff. People have plenty of time to learn the stuff. Go over it all. Most of the stuff, especially if you've already kind of gone over, follow Coach Boyle and some other place and some other coaches, some other good coaches, you're already going to be probably pretty proficient in some of these moves. So great stuff, Kev. Again, a reminder for everybody, right before the Perform Better Summit, you do have to be registered for Perform Better, but go to where, Kev, to sign up for this?
Go to certifiedfsc.com/perform better. There you can get all the details on the events, again, specifically for the Perform Better Summits. And especially if you're thinking about going to Orlando or Chicago, kind of sign up very, very soon, because you also want time to prepare. And those courses are already filling up. There's still some time for Long Beach and Providence, but we have a lot of people that kind of sign up a week or two before the event. Just make sure if you're thinking about doing this, get signed up. Get prepared. You have plenty of opportunities to email me and Mike and ask questions and stuff like that. And again, I really hope you take this opportunity to kind of see what we're doing, because I'm very biased. I believe it is something very special and something that's very impactful that we're doing in the industry, raising the bar of what is considered to be someone that is certified to be a strength coach or a personal trainer. And you're going to get so much out of it, including we work with Precision Nutrition, FMS, and Perform Better to give you discounts on their services as well. So it's really, really great. And Anthony, thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to talk about this. And thank you, if you're listening, for giving me the time and listening as well.
Cool, Kevin. Thank you very much. All right, now it's time for Hit the Gym with the Strength Coach. And today I have on Todd Hargrove. And Todd is actually a massage practitioner, and he has a practice in Seattle. He's a Rolfer. I think for our strength coaches, one of the first introductions to one of the Rolfers was Thomas Myers. So, Todd, thanks for coming on today.
Thank you, Anthony. Thanks for having me.
All right. Well, one of our members on StrengthCoach.com, Dan Silver, reminded me about you. I mean, I've heard your name come up over the last few years, especially when the book came out. You're the author of A Guide to Better Movement, the Science and Practice of Moving with More Skill and Less Pain.
Yes.
And I haven't finished the book, but obviously been perusing it, and there's you did a great job with taking some super hard concepts and trying to, now I don't want to say dumb them down for people like me, but let's just call it that.
Make them digestible. Simple. Making complex things simple. How about that?
There you go. Excellent. So good job with the book.
Thank you very much.
So I'm basically let's talk about some of the things in the book that obviously are going to relate to our trainers and strength coaches. But Todd, let's start off right away with flexibility. I love, the role of flexibility in good movement is generally overrated. Flexibility does not appear to protect against injury. For example, hockey players, in hockey players, strong adductors are far more protective against groin strain than flexible adductors, which offer no benefit. So flexibility in the muscles of the posterior chain as well correlates with slower running and poor running economy. Give us your rant on flexibility.
Yeah, I think there's a general impression out there, maybe not amongst your sophisticated listeners, but around people in general when they're thinking about their movement. For example, my clients, many of them will come in and go, oh, I'm so inflexible. Or, they know they're here to work on their movement. We're going to work on their movement, and I'm assessing their movement, and they feel guilty that they're not more flexible. They feel guilty that they don't stretch more often. They show me their forward bend, and they go, you know what? That's not so bad. That's kind of what I'm looking for. They can touch their toes without bending the knees too much. That's a reasonable standard to get to. But the general impression out there is that you should be able to look like that, 16-year-old, 90-pound girl that you saw in the yoga class that could put her nose to her knees and get her palms to the ground when she's doing her forward bend. The idea out there from yoga or whatever is that, good movement equals large ranges of motion. And I think it's more important to have good control over the range that you have, especially the end range, than to have really large ranges of motion, which can actually be a problem if you've got too much flexibility. So, for whatever sport you're in, different sports have different range of motion demands. But for a lot of your sports, your soccer, your running, your baseball, your basketball, the athletes out there probably don't have very large ranges of motion compared to the average healthy person. What they've got is an incredible ability to control the ranges they have with precision and strength and speed and power and all that kind of stuff. So more effort should be put into that and less in just to increasing range of motion.
Yeah, and like I said, Dr. Andrea Spina with functional range conditioning really talks a lot about that. Dewey Nielsen, controlling that end range. For you and your thoughts, how do we get that? How do we train that?
Yeah, I think that there's a lot of systems out there about what you do at the end range of motion. Just passive stretching. You go to the end range of motion and you just hang out there. And then there's other systems that say, well, let's get that active range of motion. Get to the end range of motion and do something active there. And then there's these PNF little contract, relax tricks where you go to the end range of motion, then you contract or try to push it in one way, you put it in the other way. What I think all these techniques have in common is you're basically just trying to do functional stuff that you need to get done at that end range of motion. So I don't really care what it is you do. Hanging out's okay. It's kind of boring. It's not as interesting as getting there actively and controlling it with some sort of precision. It's not as demanding as getting there quickly and then also having balance. So every different functional task that you want to accomplish has some different requirements about what needs to be done at that end range of motion. So I think the SAID principle says that eventually you want to be able to attain that range of motion and do whatever it is you need to do in your sport, whether that's be really well balanced or to have power or to get there quickly or to be coordinated there. So I think it's basically just hanging out in that end range of motion, spending some time there and doing some stuff that's demanding, whether that's balance, whether that's strength, whether that's motor control, whatever you need will make you better at being there and safer at being there.
Nice. Let's segue that safety idea. You said when a particular joint is in optimal position for safety and performance with regard to a particular function, we can say the joint is in neutral or centrated. There's kind of a little controversy over this idea of neutral. And I just want you to talk about what do you mean by neutral? Is there a neutral, really? Is it neutral or is it natural? I remember Rob Rogers, strength coach, wrote an article called Neutral or Natural. And, where should we be with that?
Yeah, well, there is a lot of kind of discussion and debate on that. I think some of it's kind of like semantics. It depends on how you define neutral. I had my little definition right there. I can't even remember what it was. But, one way to define it, and I think, I don't want to put words in Charlie Weingraf's mouth, but I think this is maybe part of the way he thinks about it. Actually, I'm going to just leave that. I'm not sure about that at all. But one way to think about it is it's kind of halfway between the end ranges of motion in either direction. So, if when is your spine in neutral? Most of us think of spine in neutral as kind of like, it's not overly lordotic and it's not overly flexed. It's kind of the position that you would be in if you were standing up, as the position you'd be in if you were deliberately arching your back versus deliberately moving forward. And so most people think, but we don't really know, that the neutral position for the back is pretty much what you see when people are standing, and then that's a good position to load the back. That's a safe position to load the back. So if you were putting a big barbell on your back and squatting down, you want to maintain that neutral position. It might not be so good to have it overly arched, or it might be so good to have it overly flexed. Now that's going to be different for every single person. There's no one joint position that applies to everybody. And it may be that for some people, they actually are a little bit safer when they squat down, when they're a little bit more extension than other people, or a little bit more flexion than other people. But whatever that position is for them, which allows them to do that squat most effectively and safely, I would call that neutral. And we would expect that if you moved a little bit to the left or the right of that, they'd be a little bit less safe and a little bit less functional. So when I say neutral, I just mean like the best position to be in. And also part of what I mean by that is that little small adjustments in those joint positions sometimes can make a big difference. So if you kind of tweak, I know a lot of people that they work on their squatting, they work on maintaining that neutral position in their back. And even though there's maybe only a little change in the way they've arranged their back from squatting, they were kind of rounding just a little bit before, and they were getting aggravated. But then they learn how to keep that curve just a little bit, and now they're not. So part of the idea with neutral, I think, is that maybe small differences in your joint orientation can have a big effect on your performance and whether or not it hurts.
Yeah, I guess it's confusing because, like, when you were saying, like, you look at somebody standing up and what's their natural, or, what's that position they're in. But then if I say, okay, you got to go see Todd for a couple sessions and he's going to, work on, let's say the hips, because let's say somebody's a little bit more anteriorly, anterior tilt. That might really not be where they should be. It just might be a function of maybe some dysfunction that they have, right?
Yeah. Well, that relates to another one of my ideas, which I definitely see reflected in Mike Boyle's stuff and Greg Cook's stuff in their joint by joint model. Is that this is kind of a Feldenkrais idea? Is that kind of part of a one way to think about what's good movement is that you distribute the demands of the movement over as many joints as possible. So if you've got to do a multi-segmental range of motion movement, like bending over or twisting or something like that, it's good to have all the joints share a nice proportional amount of the work. And in the example you were just talking about there, what happens in squatting is the joint, the hips aren't doing enough work usually, so that the back does a little bit more of the work of movement. It's a predictable error that a lot of people have, and I think that's the idea with the joint by joint is that usually, maybe not always, but hips usually need a little bit more mobility. So for most people, that's where the good distribution of motion is kind of breaking down a little bit. Hips probably need to be a little bit more mobile for most people, so the back doesn't have to be as mobile.
I want to move into motor control. You talk a lot about motor control in the book, and I think we're at that point. You and I were talking earlier. We're kind of at that point where, it's cool at cocktail parties. I mean, that's our cocktail parties, right? Not, but
you've been to a cocktail party?
Yeah,
I
exactly. Not really. Give us. I love what you said in this. About this analogy. We've created a computer program that can beat the world's greatest chess players, but cannot build a robot that can load a dishwasher. So motor control in movement is so important. Give us a definition of this, your definition, and talk to us about why, us as strength coaches, what else do we need to know?
Yeah, so motor control basically just means the process of coordinating all the right firings of all the right muscle fibers to produce the series of joint motions that are going to produce a coordinated movement. So it's basically motor control. I think is probably synonymous with coordination, which I think is just the harmonious movement of the joints. And you're basically just trying to solve movement problems. And the idea with that robotics thing is, I think it's just amazing what when you really think about what humans can do with their movement, it really is pretty amazing. I love to watch robotics videos on YouTube to see where they're at with their robots. And if you ever watch the robots playing soccer, they kind of stagger around a little bit. They look at the ball and they swing and they whiff and they can barely do anything.
That's awesome. Video, I saw that video. Yeah.
You know those ones? Yeah.
Yeah.
But they got these new ones that are built like cheetahs, and they run around and they get up when you push them down and stuff like that. So they're getting a little bit further. But I mean, part of what that shows is that one of the incredible things about the human movement system, our coordination, is our ability to respond to all these different changes in the environment. So you can build a robot to do something very, very, very precisely. But what you can't do is build a robot that reacts to that continues to do that even if you perturb it, even if you push it, even if it has a change in environment. So like a robot can walk very well over even ground, but as soon as you put it outside where there's dips in the ground or something like that, it's going to fall down. So one of the incredible things about human motor control, and what people who want to develop it need to think about, is the ability of your coordination to be very adaptable and resourceful and respond to different environments. I think that would be a cool thing for a strength coach to know, and I think it's part of the reason why people are getting more interested in variability. So it might be more interesting or functional for someone to be able to squat in 4 or 5 different ways successfully than to do a perfect squat under just one set of conditions. Because when they go out on the field and they're playing, they need variable movement. They need adaptable and resourceful movement. They can do hundreds and hundreds of different things. Maybe that's a better thing than just doing one thing perfectly.
Yeah, I think, well, the challenge there becomes, in my opinion, how much of that do we really need to do in the gym when we have that practice field? So do I really
exactly. That's exactly the perfect answer. Maybe all that variability stuff gets done on the practice field.
Yeah. Okay. And one of the things I think for me, diving into your book a little bit, I work with golfers, so there's always, there's always a swing change. And because there's somebody's always doing something wrong, right? We're never going to get this down.
Yeah.
And people are changing a lot. And so I think we see this in the gym too, is when we have new clients and we're trying to help them change movement. You talk about change being a 2-step process. And what Alvaro Pascual-Leon, that was his process. Like, he was a neuroplasticity researcher, and we've seen a lot of this stuff in a lot of books about the brain. Talk to us about the 2-stage process a little bit, and about learning and what we really need to know to help our clients change.
Yeah, so I mean, I think we all kind of know this intuitively because we've all experienced it when we're learning something. Which is that, the 2-stage process is basically you're going from this stage of learning where you need to put a lot of attention on what you're doing. You need to focus your conscious attention on exactly what you're doing when, say, you learn to drive a car. You're thinking about, where do I put my right foot on the brake? Where do I put it on what's going on here? Where's that turn signal? Where's the where's the radio dial? You need to think about these things as you're doing them, and so because of that, you're not doing that good of a job with it. If you stop concentrating on what you're doing, it all kind of falls apart. So through the process of doing that, though, you get better at it, and you get better at it, and you get better until eventually it's automatic. And when you're in the automatic stage of learning, then you drive your car around. You don't even think about how you're doing all these things, and you can do other things at the same time. And you can talk to people, you can look out for other cars, you can enjoy a beverage or something like that. You can't do too much. You can't text because that'll start to mess with you. But this is how we build simple skills into complex skills. They go through that 2-stage process, and once they get to the automatic stage, then you can build on it. Then you can add something. When you've got an automatic body weight squat that happens without thinking, well, now you can start loading it in different ways and adding sophistication to it.
Yeah, it's really interesting in terms of, we see these guys who are, for me, and the golfers that want to make a change in their swing, and it takes so long. Like, even if you look at the pros, and that's where I try to talk to my clients about, listen, because when they're changing their swing, that's why it's relevant to this conversation. When they're changing their swing, I'm trying to help them change their body, change the way they move, right? So I'm trying to give them, more control at those different end ranges of motion. I'm trying to just give them more control in general, more mobility as well, along with that motor control, because we need both. But
that's even harder to change a habit that's already there. So, I mean, let's say they've been doing these are pros. They've been swinging this way for thousands and thousands of reps. This is totally automatic. It happens without them even wanting to happen. So breaking a pattern that's already been built is harder than learning, breaking a pattern and substituting a new pattern is harder than just learning the new one. So that learning a new swing, there's two things that has to happen. You have to learn the new swing. You have to unlearn the old swing. So it's like twice as hard.
What are some strategies for us, with that? Because you were talking about, look, if you want to make improvements in brain activity that controls how we move and feel, we have to keep the concepts of grooves, habits, and stages of learning in mind. This can help us imagine what kinds of neural adaptations and what levels of practice are necessary to accomplish different types of movement goals. So talk to us about those strategies to kind of really help us get through this maybe faster.
Yeah, to me, I kind of think about this in terms of my rehab situation. I mean, in my job, I'm kind of helping people with their posture or something, or the way they perceive their body, and they've got this habit of the way they're doing it. I think one of the ways that you can help people break a habit is to slow down what's happening. So, I really like slow movement to be used sometimes in mobility work, coordination work, rehab work, this kind of work. Going really slowly, I think, has some value. And it does with golf swings, too. I think sometimes people do. I know a lot of golfers do with golf swings. One of the things about moving really, really slowly is that let's put it another way. If you move fast, if you do your golf swing fast, if you do some movement quickly and with force, you're going to necessarily use your habitual way of doing that movement. There's not going to be any really way for you to avoid it, because if you do it fast, you're going to do it automatically. And if you do it automatically, you're going to use the habitual way of doing it. But if you slow it down enough, then you can use the conscious attention, which is necessary to find a different way to do it, find kind of a novel way to do it. Another way to maybe break a habit of doing stuff is to just kind of change the constraints of the movement. So you're kind of forced to do something a different way. And, we do that in all kinds of mobility drills we do. The way those drills are set up is to kind of constrain people in a way. So you have to move now more in your thorax. Your habit is to move a lot in your low back. Let's set up that twisting drill we're doing, or the cat-cow movement we're doing, in a way. So now you've got to move more in your upper back and kind of start working on that new way of doing things.
Interesting. This is great stuff. Expand on attention. You were talking about, obviously, it's really important for that change, and it's an important factor in neuroplasticity, because it affects what types of information from the body are likely to cause changes in the brain. So just kind of expand more on this role of attention, and maybe some things maybe we need to do in the gym.
Yeah, So your coordination, your ability to coordinate the body and move well, is very, very related to your ability to perceive what's going on in the body, the relevant facts about what's going on in the body. So we call this, body sense, or kinesthesia, or proprioception. Those are all about perceiving the body, but they relate very, very, very much to how we control and move the body, because you're not going to have one without the other, right? If you can't perceive your body very well, you won't have coordination. So part of the way that you perceive the body well is to pay conscious attention to the right perceptual cues. So, we're getting sensory information from all over the body all the time. But great athletes, great movers know how to pay attention to the most relevant parts of that sensory information and make meaning of it. And that's what gives them their body sense. So, if you look at someone that can do a backflip on a balance beam, they've got a really good sense of where their body is as they're going through space. When they're in that inverted position, they know where their head is, they know where their ass is, so something terrible doesn't happen. Now, if I did that same exact move, I would not have that kinesthetic feeling at all, because I'd have no idea what I was doing and I would kill myself. So the reason is I haven't done the thing enough. I don't know how to interpret the meaning of all of the proprioceptive sensory information I'm getting as I do that move. And the way that I would develop that is I'd have to practice it a lot. But as I did it, I'd have to really pay attention to what was going on when I did it. If I wasn't paying attention at all, I wouldn't succeed as well. So, and the common sense way of looking at this, we all know this, practice doesn't make perfect. Perfect practice makes perfect. And the essence of good, perfect practice is really focusing your attention on the right stuff. And a lot of the time, that's on something external in the environment and not on things that are internal in your body. And that's one of the things you just mentioned in our introduction. That you've had Nick Winkelman on before. He's got great information on the importance of paying attention to the right external cues in the environment.
Yeah, we just had him on 2 episodes ago, and he was just talking about some studies, just even talking about, like, let's say if you were jumping. You're trying to get a higher vertical jump, instead of have them try and say, touch something that they can actually touch, maybe reach. No, try to touch the clouds or touch the ceiling if you have a high ceiling. And the studies have shown that that's a much better way. They've gotten, a higher vertical jump by trying to touch the ceiling than trying to touch something that they can actually touch.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I didn't even know that. I know those are both external cues. So the external cue out of your reach is even better than the one in your reach. I didn't know that. But I think Nick's stuff is great on external versus internal. I mean, and it shows the importance of attention. Where your focus is has a lot to do with your performance and your learning.
Awesome. You spent a whole chapter on motor development and primal patterns, and we've seen a lot of popularity in some of these primal movements, whether it be, talking about DNS or animal flow or MoveNat, or there's so many now.
Primal, animal, MoveNat, flow.
Yeah, exactly.
That's my new product. That's trademarked, by the way.
Okay, sweet. No, we'll make sure nobody takes that. Todd, just give us your thoughts on the importance of these patterns and really, I guess the most, the most effective dose here, right? That we really need to have from some of these things, and how much we really should be thinking about this.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think, like a lot of things, there's probably maybe a little bit excessive hype out there about this kind of stuff. But I think that there's something to it as well. And what that is that, you're looking for, if you're going to work on your coordination, you want to get yourself coordinated in some movement pattern that has a lot of transfer to a lot of other different things. So I could get very coordinated at throwing darts or playing pool or doing tiddlywinks. That's movement patterns. That's movement quality. That's coordination. It's not going to have a lot of carryover to lots of other things that I might want to do in the field. So what are the movements that are likely to have the most carryover? It's probably developmental movements. I mean, these are the movements you learn when you're a little baby, as we know. Things like crawling, that kind of turns into walking, squatting, lunge-type movements. I know the FMS is influenced by this type of thinking, and that's the idea, is to work on stuff that has a lot of carryover. And the idea is that complex movements are built together by putting from the building blocks of really simple movements. And again, these simple movements are things like, squats and lunges and stuff like that. And of course, the idea is if I improve my squat, if I improve the movement pattern there, maybe I'd improve a lot of other stuff I did in sports, because there's always little squatting motions happening there. Maybe I'd improve my lateral transitions on the field. Maybe I'd improve a tennis serve, because that kind of involves kind of a triple extension type of a movement. So that's the basic idea. If you're going to work on movement quality, work on the fundamentals, the basics, the stuff that has a lot of transfer, I think developmental movements are a good place to look to find those. And it's not, we haven't totally figured it out. And it's not like you can just go imitate a baby and get a ton of great work done. But I think that's an interesting place to look for patterns that repeat themselves.
I loved your 3-step template that could generate 1,000 useful developmental movement lessons. I just want to read it.
Someone does. Okay. I'm glad someone likes that. I've never heard anyone else even mention it.
No, I love it. Because it makes it easy. It kind of gives somebody a formula. That's what I like about it. Get into a developmental position such as supine prone, side lying, side sitting quadruped, tripod squatting. That's the first part. Engage in some developmental tasks such as orienting the head to see, reaching for something, or transitioning to a different position. Then do the movements in a playful, exploratory manner with a minimum of muscular effort and momentum, preserving the ability to reverse the movement in the opposite direction. So just talk to us about this concept and expand on it.
Yeah, I'm just I like watching these videos, and these you can see these types of movements in many places. These kind of ground flowy type of movements that people do, and you'd see them in a video that might be called animal flow or primal flow. If you're familiar with Systema, the movements that are done in Systema, it's kind of a grappling martial arts Russian thing. They have this kind of quality of slowly transitioning between these different developmental positions. So being in a squat and then flopping both of your knees to the side so you're in a side sitting position. Then you kind of slowly transfer into a crawling position or a bear position. Then into a squat, you can roll onto your back. All of these different positions that babies or adults can be in, these developmental positions, I find it interesting that you can very smoothly transfer yourself from one to the other with a minimum of ballistic activity. Very smoothly, you can reverse them. And that's why you see all these kind of ground flow stuff that people do. You see kind of Ido Portal doing it, and Scott Sonnen used to do it with, I think, something he called body flow. And I've seen it in many other places. And it's not that people are ripping other people off. It's that if you get on the ground and start kind of flowing around, this is the stuff that you'll do, because this is kind of the way that humans can move. And you find some nice mobility work when you do that. You find stability work. You find kind of basic patterns of movement, and I just think it's kind of fun.
Good stuff. Talk to me about, I want to, you spent a lot of time on Feldenkrais stuff in the book and in the lessons. Give us an overview of the philosophy of Feldenkrais and maybe what takeaways after that the strength coach can have.
Yeah, so Feldenkrais is a system of teaching people how to move with a little bit more efficiency. That's the basic idea, is kind of moving better, feeling better. And the idea is really to learn how to do movements with the minimum amount of muscular effort. And not just kind of like athletic movements, but just simple movements like, getting up and down from a chair or breathing or reaching for something. So it was developed by a guy named Moshe Feldenkrais in the 40s, 50s, and 60s. And he was kind of a scientist, and his stuff got kind of picked up by some, kind of alternative healthcare hippies in the 70s, and they kind of developed this way of teaching people movement. So part of the way they do that, there's classes. You can go to a Feldenkrais class, which is kind of like a yoga class. There's a teacher taking people through a series of movements, and each different class would have like a different functional theme. So maybe one of the classes would be all about just reaching. So you might be on your back and slowly reaching your hand away from you along the floor, just kind of sliding it. And then you do that in different orientations with a different hip position. You'd kind of notice what happens with your ribs or your scapula as you're reaching. You perform many repetitions very, very slowly, very gently, paying a lot of attention to how it feels. And if the lesson was successful, you'd have kind of like a better sense of coordination about the way your whole upper body is kind of organized and related to the hips. And there's different lessons. Some of the lessons are about squatting, and some of them are about lunging, and some of them are about rolling. There's many developmental movements in there, like crawling and stuff like that. And it's basically just a way to build body awareness and to build coordination and some of these fundamental movement patterns. And I think one of the ideas in it that might be valuable to other people is something I mentioned before. It's just going slow. In Feldenkrais, you're always going very slow. It gives you a chance to do something a different way. It gives you a chance to mess things up without hurting yourself, because there's such low forces involved. It gives you a chance to find something non-habitual, because if you move faster, you invoke habitual habits. And it gives you a chance to really pay attention to what you're doing and evaluate whether or not you're using excess tension if you go real slow. I think that's something that you can do. And you can take that idea of moving slow and trying to have really smooth movement in a lot of different areas. And you don't stay slow. You build it up to go fast again. But I think spending some time with the slowness is cool in many contexts.
Yeah, no, at least you had said, you don't stay slow. You got to, because, a lot of
Yeah,
guys
no,
out
it's
there-
useless. You don't want to stay, yeah.
Yeah, this train slow, be slow, right? But I tell you, I've seen that a few times with golf pros trying to say, no, just almost go in slow motion the whole time. Like, try to make it the longest swing ever. So it's going to take 3 minutes to do, back and forth, maybe even longer from the
3
teaching.
minutes, yeah, that would be brutal.
It is. It's brutal. To try that. And you get frustrated when you're doing it because you feel like it just doesn't feel natural, but you after a while you start to feel like, okay, you understand where that position really should be. If somebody's correcting you as well. So is it like that? Are you doing that when you're doing some of these really slow movements, or you're trying to teach somebody?
You'll get a feel for things. You'll get information about things that you wouldn't otherwise get, I think is the idea. And that's also true by going really fast. Obviously, the important thing is to be able to swing the club at the speed you need to swing it. And there's things that happen in your body when you're swinging fast that don't happen when you're swinging slow. So that slow swing, it's kind of unrealistic in a way, because part of what takes you back is kind of like this ballistic momentum. You don't have that when you're going slow. But when you're going slow, maybe there's some other information there or insight or body sense that you gain from doing that you don't get from the fast.
Good stuff. I just want to finish up with, you wrote a blog post on, thoughts on play. And it's one of the things that I've kind of really tried to, I have a lot of seniors. And one of the things that I've tried to do is bring that idea of the playground back to them. I have a few people.
Does it work?
What's that?
Does it work with the seniors?
They love it.
It's good. Good, huh?
I think that's the most important part. But I have an older woman. I taught her how to throw when she was like 74, and she never knew how to throw. And now we when she comes in, we do about 20 minutes of first she throws some. We play a little basketball. I have like a kids basketball thing where the hoop's like 6 feet, and then so I do different things with her on that. I actually, if you watched me, you would think I was showing off because I'll throw the basketball like between my legs, or I'll fake her out. Try to fake her out. I'm actually just trying to mess with her brain a little bit. I try to spin the ball to her. If you'd be like, "What's wrong with you?" If you were watching, and you didn't talk to me. Then I get hockey sticks out and I'll kind of
you're dunking right in her face.
Yeah,
right?
I'm like, come on.
Yeah.
I'll do stuff with hockey, and I'll kind of, throw the ball up a little bit. I'll bank it and just kind of do some trick shots. I'm trying to mess with her. I get the soccer ball out, so we play a little bit of soccer. Not running back and forth. And then she throws the football around. Then I'll get her husband to come in and because he's working out at the same time, and I kind of cover him and have her throw the ball to him. And then we finish up with me pitching to her, and then I do a lot of trash talking too. I'll tell her, I'm like, come on, here comes the heat, and then she's like swings. I'm like, we got a whiffer here, and you can't take the heat, get out of the kitchen, stupid stuff like that. But I'm trying to do some things to bring back. I just don't want to just throw weights at her, the whole time. I only do like 15 minutes of like strength training with her, to be honest with you. But I really feel like this is so important to kind of get back to that playground. Can you just give us some different thoughts, your thoughts on play and what we should do?
Well, I think there's a lot of ways to look at why play is a beneficial thing. I mean, one thing that you kind of, in the context of what you just said, it's fun. Play always involves something that's internally motivating. So it's kind of different than work. Work is something you do under the stress of need. Play is something that's kind of like intrinsically fun to do. So if you go to the gym and you get some of your working out done by just having fun, well, then you've got that much more willpower and discipline left over to do the stuff that maybe isn't so fun at the end of the workout. So things that are fun to do, people show up for them. They do them day after day. I mean, one of the most important things about a workout is just to show up and have a positive attitude and do it. For most people, it's a practical matter. So that's one good thing for play. And then the other thing that kind of like in the context of what you're saying, what are you working with her there? You're making her very, very, you're making her have to respond to all these different situations. She has to be adaptable. She has to be resourceful. She has to be perceptually attuned to what you're doing. That's what functions like in the real world, right? I mean, if she's, that's the functions that we have to perform on a field. Scanning the environment, seeing what people are doing, making a quick cut to deal with it. And that's really what it's about, and that's kind of what's going on when you're doing all that stuff with her. So whenever you're playing, you're working a little bit more on the variability, that other kind of stuff. And you made that good point. But hey, if these guys are going on the field anyway, maybe they're getting that anyway. But maybe for people that aren't getting that in their lives, like this woman, it's a really valuable thing to deliver that one way or the other,
Yeah, and even like when I was talking to Guido Van Ryssen about proprioception on one of my episodes, and he was talking about like just even having one day where you're changing the environment. So even if they are getting stuff on the field and in the gym, to change up that environment and make it, let's call it proprioceptively richer. Right. He thinks it's a really, really super important. And, we've been talking about things with barefoot on here with Anna Hartman and Jesse Senslin, and really talking about how some of Philip Beach's work with, the feet and, the importance of barefoot and having that kind of walking on rocks, and, because those nerves are innervated, the same nerves and the feet are innervated in the pelvic floor and the lumbar spine. So I think, all of these things kind of seem to kind of come back full circle.
Yeah, just kind of getting the client more information about their body, better body awareness.
Good stuff. Well, I just want to remind everybody of the book, and we'll have a link to it on strengthcoachpodcast.com. But it's a guide to better movement, the science and practice of moving with more skill and less pain. You did a great job with this book, and so Todd, thanks so much for coming on today.
Thank you very much for having me and for the good questions.
All right, well, that's going to do it for episode 186 of the Strength Coach Podcast. Special thanks to Chris Pryor and the folks over at Perform Better. You can check them out at performbetter.com for all their products and info on their educational seminars. Thanks to Coach Boyle and Todd Hargrove for sharing their insights and philosophies into the world of strength and conditioning, performance enhancement, and movement. Alan Cosgrove for the Results Fitness University Business of Fitness segment. Check them out at resultsfitnessuniversity.com. Mark Snow and Functional Movement Systems. Check them out at functionalmovement.com. And of course, remember you can join strengthcoach.com and have access to the site for just $1. 3 days, just $1. After the 3 days, if you don't love the site, simply cancel your membership and you won't pay another penny. Once your 3-day trial is over and you become a member, you'll be able to download Coach Boyle's 2 books. And if you have a staff of 2 or more and you want to sign up as a group, we have a special membership offer for you up to 50% off, depending on how many people you have. Check it out at strengthcoach.com. Click the Join Now button to get started on your trial. My name's Anthony Rennan. You can reach me at strengthcoachpodcast@gmail.com. Thanks again, and I'll speak to you next time.